Welcome back to Mythic Albion, the podcast where we journey into the myths, legends and sacred landscapes of Britain. In today's episode, our journey takes us to a land where ancient stones rise from the sea, where heroes battled monsters and rival kings, where enchanted swans flew across lonely lakes and where mournful spirits still whisper in the darkness. Northern Ireland is a place where history and legend have intertwined so closely that to separate them would be nigh on impossible. Across the rugged coastline, mist-covered mountains and ancient forests, stories have been passed down through generation for millennia. Long before castles dominated the horizon, before Christianity spread across the Emerald Isle, poets, storytellers and wandering travellers would recount these tales next to burning fires and long after they turned to embers. Tales of gods, warriors and magical beings. Much of these legends belong to something scholars call the Ulster cycle, a great collection of Irish mythology. Even before then, scribes would recount a time of mythical age populated by giants and supernatural beings. Whether you believe these stories be nothing more than quaint folklore or exaggerated truth matters not. Their real power lies in the landscape itself. There are lessons about honour, courage and sacrifice. Stories where beauty and tragedy often walk hand in hand together. In this episode of Mythic Albion, we will encounter one of Northern Ireland's greatest heroes, Finn McCool, whose battle with a formidable Scottish giant created one of the world's most beautiful natural wonders. We will also look at the heart-yearning tale of the Children of Lir, transformed into swans for centuries. We will also meet the legendary warrior Cú Chulainn, whose courage and epic deeds became the very symbol of Ulster itself. We will explore the tragic romance of Deirdre of the Sorrows, a great love story. And as darkness falls, we will listen to the eerie cry of one of Northern Ireland's most feared creatures, the Banshee. So dim the lights, settle into your favourite chair, and let us take a journey back into the myths and legends of Northern Ireland. No legendary figure towers over Irish folklore quite like Finn McCool. Finn McCool was a giant, but he wasn't just any giant. He was clever, a warrior, and something of a trickster. Unlike other mythical figures, he was not remembered just for his incredible strength, but for his guile as well. As a young giant, he gained supernatural insight after accidentally tasting the salmon of knowledge, which was being cooked for the druid Finnegas. As the fish cooked and sizzled over a fire, Finn puts his thumb on the fish and, realising how hot it was, instantly withdrew it and placed it into his mouth. And from that moment on, he was given the extraordinary ability of wisdom, with hidden knowledge being bestowed to him. Across Ireland and Scotland, enormous boulders, dramatic cliffs and unusual geography were often explained away as being the actions of giants. In a world less understood by geologists, it only seems plausible that features too vastly shaped by mere mortals must have been forged by beings of impossible size. Finn lived on the northern coast of what we know of today as County Antrim, and across the sea, the island of Staffa off the west coast of Scotland, was another giant, known as Benandonna. An enormous and fearsome figure, he was rival to Finn and towered over the landscape with great strength and power. Dressed in furs, a kilt and shaggy red hair, he stared out at the waters at Finn with piercing blue eyes. The two giants exchanged insults across the narrow channel, and their booming voices were said to be mistaken for that of storms. After many years, Finn decided that they would meet face to face, giant to giant, and settle their feud once and for all. But not even a giant could cross that large expanse of water. Tearing great columns of basalt from the surrounding cliffs, Finn hurled them into the water with prodigious strength, resulting in an immense stone causeway stretching all the way to Scotland. And for a time, a road had been forged between Ireland and Scotland, but one only fit for giants. Finn walked out onto the Causeway one day and saw his rival in the distance. Benandonna was large, larger even than Finn, thrice as big he estimated. Finn was no coward, but he was no fool either, and knew that in a test of brute force, he would not win. This large Scottish red giant sensed Finn's hesitation and began to bound across the Causeway. Finn turned tail and ran back to the coastline, losing a boot in the process. Upon reaching his stronghold, he looked around for anything that might help him vanquish his giant adversary. The sound of the approaching red man was so thunderous, Finn had to stuff his ears with moss. Moments passed, and finally, Benandonna bounded onto the shoreline, looking for this puny upstart. Instead, he found Unar, Finn's wife, who welcomed their guest, excusing Finn's absence that he had tarried away on a deer hunt. Benandonna was not impressed and scanned the horizon. Unar turned to the red giant and asked if she would like to see their baby. To the side of the stronghold was a huge cradle. As Benandonna peered into the cradle, a huge hand came out of the swaddling and tried to touch the face of the Scottish giant. It was large, almost as large as his face. Gods! If this was the size of the bairn, then how big was the father? Before he realised what was happening, his middle finger had been bitten off by this giant babe. Benandonna turned tail and fled back across the giant's causeway. Unbeknownst to the red giant, it was Finn himself in the cradle, cleverly disguised as a baby. As the red giant fled, Finn scooped up a huge chunk of Antrim earth and flung it at his fleeing opponent. The thrown piece of earth landed in the ocean and became known as the Isle of Man. Standing along County Antrim's coastline today are around 40,000 interlocking basalt columns. With a unique appearance, many of them are hexagonal in shape, fitting together with unusual symmetry, as if they were man-made. And even today, they seem almost too unusual to assume their creation was natural. Many visitors and tourists today remark that upon walking across, it feels less like a geological feature and more like stepping onto the ruins of a once forgotten civilization. Today, the creation of the cause is explained away by science, but they were formed 60 million years ago during volcanic activity. As the lava cooled, it cracked, forming the hexagonal shapes we know of today, a great marvel of one of nature's great masterpieces. But for hundreds of years, this was not believed to be the case. Generations of people looked at this feature and, like today, remarked that only beings of immense size and strength could have made something that looked so precise. And thus, the legend of the Giant's Causeway persevered. The landscape itself has an almost mythical quality about it and demanded a mythical explanation. On a clear day, it is possible to glimpse Scotland, much like Finn McCool could. And whether created by lava or the legendary feud between two fantastical beings, the Giant's Causeway remains one of the most magical places in the British Isles. And the thing about a mythical explanation, it lends something that science can never do: a personality, a story, a sense of wonder. If the story of Finn McCool and the Giant's Causeway fills us with excitement, then the legends of the Children of Lir remind us that not all myths end with a happy ending. Long ago in the northern part of Ireland, in a place filled with green hills and wild flowers, there lived a gentle king known as Lir. Lir lived happily in his castle with his 4 children, and they were his greatest joy. The eldest was his daughter named Finn McCool. Inheriting her father's sense of kindness, she was sweet and caring, and looked after the youngest boy, who was called a boy of pure innocence who was always giggling and dancing on his feet. Then there were the twin boys, Fiacra and Con, who were always up to mischief in exploring the many rooms and corridors of the castle, as well as the wooded area. One sad day their mother passed away, and a great sadness fell on the kingdom and it seemed even the sun dimmed during this time. The king had great sadness in his heart, and he wished to refill the sadness now in his children's hearts. So the widowed king married again, marrying a lady known as Aoife. She had a startling beauty about her, always dressed in deep purple gowns, her long flowing raven hair seeming to merge into her attire. And at first, things seemed fine. The king was happy, as were the children. But the happiness was only surface level for the new queen. She saw how much the king and everyone in the kingdom loved the children, and something dark grew inside of her: jealousy. Consumed with bitterness, Aoife could no longer tolerate their happiness and plotted something truly wicked. On an autumn morning, she led the children to a lonely lake. Aoife was in fact a sorceress. With the children playing in the water, she withdrew a magic wand from her sleeve and uttered an ancient spell of transfigurement. And so the 4 beautiful children became 4 beautiful white swans. Although their bodies had changed, their voices remained human. They could still sing and speak and weep because they remembered everything. For a moment, Aoife seemed consumed with guilt, but unable to reverse what had been done, told the children they would remain as swans for 900 years. 300 years would be spent on this lake. 300 years would be spent on the cold, stormy North Sea, and 300 years would be spent on a faraway island. And even then, only after hearing Christian church bells and witnessing a marriage of North and South would the enchantment finally end. The swans glided across that lake, feathers glowing in the evening light as if retaining the subsiding sunshine. The haunting melodies and songs drifted across the water. These melodies were so profoundly beautiful that anyone who heard them would forget about hunger, sorrow, or even the passing of time. Upon hearing of this, the king rushed to the lake and would spend every day sitting in the water with his children. After the first 300 years would pass, the swans were driven from the lake to the cold and stormy conditions of the sea between Ireland and Scotland. The Sea of Moyle proved to be especially cruel, but the 4 swans huddled together, and with their songs and their love for each other, they endured the ocean. Finn McCool, being the largest, would surround her younger siblings in her great wings to protect them from the harsh elements. And then finally, after the 600th year, they found the island, and they found peace once more. Going up and down the beautiful shoreline, they remained for a further 300 years. For ordinary people, 900 years is beyond comprehension. Kingdoms rise and fall, languages change, faiths transform, and even entire civilizations can come and go. Yet the Children of Lir endured it all, watching the world change around them, prisoners of an ancient curse, with the only unchanging variable being their love for one another. And then one day, as they were gliding across the lake on the island of Inishglora, they heard a new sound, the sound of a bell from a building they had never seen before, a church bell. This magical sound was coming from a newly built church nearby. The 4 swans swam nearer to the edge to better hear this sound, and saw that a marriage was taking place between 2 noble houses, one from the south and one from the north. Aoife's spell was beginning to break, and before the swans realised what was happening again, they had become human on the edge of that sun-dappled lake. However, the passage of time immediately caught up with them. They were no longer young children and were now very old and very wise. As they swam to the shore, they watched the sun set in their human forms for the first time in 900 years. A kind monk came upon them and told them he had built this church. Seeing great love and sadness within these 4 individuals, he baptized them at the church and told them everyone that they had ever loved would be waiting for them in a place of eternal joy. The curse was lifted, but the life that they had lost could never be restored. The 4 siblings walked out of the church hand in hand, and before long, quietly passed from this world. In the evening their spirits rose, children once again, eager to see their father on the other side. A bittersweet ending, a story of betrayal and unwavering loyalty despite the centuries of hardship, and hope, a hope that survived even where there seemed none for nearly 1,000 years. And to this day, throughout all of that island, white swans gliding silently across misty lakes are often said to remind people of Finn McCool and all her siblings. Cú Chulainn is often remembered as Ireland's greatest warrior. His story forms the heart of the Ulster cycle, a collection of heroic tales centred around the ancient kingdom of Ulster and the court of King Causeway. Born a Cententa, even from a young age the young hero displayed astonishing strength, almost from infancy. One famous tale tells that whilst travelling to a feast hosted by the smith, Chulainn, the boy was running late having played games during the day. Chulainn believed that all his guests had arrived and released his giant guard dog to patrol outside. As the boy approached, the dog charged. Rather than flee, Cententa began to twirl his sling above him and let loose a stone ball at the beast's head before wrestling him to the ground. The boy stood up, the dog did not. While the guests marvelled at the boy's courage, the smith was furious as the dog had protected his home for years. Wanting to make amends, the boy made a promise that until the smith had trained another dog, he would become his new hound and would defend Chulainn's house as his faithful dogs had. And from that day onward, he became Cú Chulainn, the Hound of Chulainn. As the boy grew older, his stature and skill in battle bordered on the supernatural. With long flowing dark hair, dressed in brown fatigues, a green breastplate, green gauntlets, a shield fastened to his forearm, he wielded a mighty spear known as the Guy Bolger. Despite his martial prowess, Cú Chulainn could also draw on earth power and would fly into a fearsome battle frenzy. His body would twist and grow to a grotesque size. With one eye sunken in and the other bulging out, his lips would pull back to reveal giant teeth. His muscles swelled outwardly beyond recognition, and this transformation would be known as a warp spasm. In some accounts, it was said that his skin also turned red. This transformation would turn him into an unstoppable force, and he would literally become a one-man army, with few things being able to harm him. Whether this power came from the divine, berserk fury, or something pagan, it's impossible to say. What was certain that to his enemies, this sight was terrifying to behold. Cú Chulainn's greatest test came at the cattle raid of Cooley. The Queen of Connacht sought to steal the prized cattle of Cooley to match the wealth of her husband. She marched upon Ulster with a huge army. The people of Ulster were struck by a strange curse which rendered them unable to fight. As the vast armies of Queen Mebd approached, standing in the middle of a country road on the outskirts stood Cú Chulainn, and he stood alone. Declaring that no man could defeat him single-handedly, wave after wave of champions came forward, only to fall to Cú Chulainn's martial prowess. Each day the invasion was delayed was another day that Ulster could recover. With blue battle paint decorated over his face, a giant broadsword in one hand and his Guy Bolger in the other, it was one warrior against an entire kingdom. On one morning, when Cú Chulainn expected another warrior to come forward, a beautiful woman came forward instead. Claiming to be the daughter of a king, she professed her love for the young warrior. He refused her, and she revealed herself to be the Morrigan, swearing to take revenge on him. She would go on to take many forms, many horrific and eldritch, but none of these were enough to defeat the steadfast warrior. Mortally wounded, she came to him as an old crone and offered him 3 cups of milk. With each cup emptied, Morrigan's vitality returned. However, during his next round of combat, he barely survived and suffered many wounds. The great warrior Lugh would heal his wounds and revealed himself to be Cú Chulainn's father. While recovering from his wounds, he heard that his uncle's armies had gone up against the Queen's and was slain to the man. This sent him into his greatest warp spasm yet, and flying into a rage charged into the army, where he slew 100 men instantly with one swing of his sword. Stacking the bodies up to make a wall, the army of Connacht retreated. But slaying so many men comes at a price, and 3 sons of slain soldiers plotted his demise. In those days there were 2 taboos, the consumption of dog meat and refusing hospitality. One day Cú Chulainn was approached by an old crone, offering him dog meat. In doing so, he knew he would have to break one of these taboos and accepted the dog meat. Cú Chulainn was spiritually weakened by this, and the 3 sons soon approached with magical spears. The first one would kill his charioteer, the second would kill his horse, and the third would kill him. Knowing he could not escape fate, he tied himself to a stone. Better to die on his feet than pitifully on his knees. There he remained, silent and bleeding. Despite being pierced by the 3rd spear, he fought on with every ounce of strength he had. Finally, one of the ravens of Morrigan landed on his shoulder, even as he was still gripping his spear, signalling that Cú Chulainn had finally died. Not all legends and folklore celebrate victory. Some are remembered for the tragedy left behind, and few better reflect this than that of Deirdre of the Sorrows. According to legend, Deirdre's fate was sealed long before she was even born. While her mother was pregnant with her, the druid known as Captivate foretold that the unborn child would grow into the most beautiful woman Ireland had ever seen. But that beauty would come at a price. It would bring ruin. Kings would wage war, heroes would die, men would tear each other apart, and Ulster with it. Upon hearing this prophecy, King Concobar decided he would simply marry the girl when she came of age. To better ensure the prophecy would never come to pass, he hid her away from society where no man could ever lay eyes on her. But even fate does not care for the whims of monarchy. On one snowy winter's morning, Deirdre witnessed a raven feeding upon the blood of a slaughtered calf. Something stirred within her, and she remarked that she wished to marry a man with hair as black as a raven, skin as white as snow, and cheeks the colour of newly spilled blood. And for Deirdre, this man already existed, and he was known as Naoise. Naoise was a young warrior of the Red Branch, and when they met, they instantly fell in love. Knowing the king would never allow such a union, they fled Ireland together, seeking refuge in Scotland, and for a time they found peace and happiness. But the king did not, and his rage did not cease. He deployed messengers to Scotland, promising forgiveness and safe passage home. Naively, they trusted the king's word and returned. Naoise and his brothers were ambushed and killed, with Deirdre snatched and taken back to the king against her will. She lived under his rule for a year, consumed with grief. She would never forgive the king. Unable to bear her grief anymore, she chose death rather than a life of misery without freedom. One day she threw herself from a moving chariot, and her life was forfeit. She died, and in death her spirit was once again reunited with Naoise. This particular tale is a haunting one, of love-defying power. Unlike fairy tales with a happy ending, Deirdre's story reminds us that some of the greatest legends endure precisely because they refuse to offer comfort. Today, poets and scholars continue to retell her story, seeing not just a tragic heroine, but a symbol of dignity, resilience and innocence, and the refusal to surrender one's heart. As our journey comes to its end, we arrive at perhaps Ireland's most chilling supernatural legend, the Banshee. The name comes from the Irish Benir, the woman of the fairy mound. Unlike many ghosts or monsters, the Banshee is rarely considered evil. She does not kill and she does not curse. Instead, she warns. According to tradition, certain ancient Irish families are watched over by a mysterious female spirit, sometimes seen as a beautiful young woman or an old crone. She always has silver hair and is dressed in grey or white, hovering above the ground like vapour. Sometimes she is seen washing bloodstone clothing beside a lonely stream, earning her another eerie title, the Washer at the Ford. Yet this is not the most terrifying thing that people fear the most. It is her ear-splitting scream. Witnesses describe it as something heard unlike anything they have experienced before. Part scream, part wail, its heartbreaking lament bombards every square inch of a person's body and soul. Often associated with certain families, her scream is meant to warn of impending death of someone in the household. Is she a ghost, a spirit, a wraith, demon or fairy? In a sense, she is all of these things. In modern times, Banshee has come to mean woman of the fairies, which makes sense with the term she referring to fairy dwellings and their kin. Unlike other creatures of this type, the cat she is described as a giant black cat and the Cú Chulainn is a giant green spectral hound. Stories of banshees became common in isolated rural communities, where unexplained sounds drifting across the night carried an almost supernatural weight. Was the banshee simply folklore born from grief, or did generations experience something they could not explain? No one can say, and even today, tales continue to emerge from lonely country roads, ruined castles and remote valleys, those locations where sound doesn't quite carry right. And people speak of hearing strange cries on windless nights, of glimpsing a solitary woman standing silently between ancient stone walls before vanishing without a trace. Whether ghost, fairy or a symbol of warning, the banshee occupies a unique place in Irish folklore. She's not the cause of death, she is its messenger, and perhaps that is what makes her all the more unsettling. Northern Ireland is a place where myth seems woven into the very landscape. The hexagonal stones of the giant's Causeway became the work of giants. The quiet lakes echo the sounds of enchanted swans. Ancient hilltops recall the deeds of warriors whose courage become legend. Lonely valleys remember lovers whose stories ended in heartbreak. And when the wind whistles through the ruined castles after dark, it is easy to understand why people once believed spirits still wandered these places. Whether these stories are viewed as history, metaphor, or simply wonderful tales passed from generation to generation, they remain an invaluable part of Northern Ireland's wonderful cultural heritage. They connect to the hopes, fears and imaginations of those who came before us. In every generation, storytellers have breathed new life into these legends so that these tales can be told forevermore. And therein lies the true magic of folklore. It changes with every telling, yet somehow remains timeless. If you've enjoyed today's episode of Mythic Albion, please be sure to leave a like and review. It helps others find their way back across those giant causeways. And so marks the end of our penultimate episode, as next time, in our season finale, we find out about the very origins of Albion itself. How old is it? Who were the very first inhabitants? Who gave the very many names associated with it? So join us next time for part 1 of our grand finale. So until next time, keep your eyes on the horizon and ears open, and beware the thunder of giant footsteps crashing over the giant's causeway.